Who is she, Kyle? I demanded, clutching my newborn son Jake tightly against my chest. My heart pounded as I looked at the young woman standing next to him. Her presence in our home felt like an intrusion, a cold slap in the face. Kyle's eyes were icy, devoid of any warmth. "Meet Aaron," he said flatly. "We're together now." The room spun. Just hours ago I'd been overwhelmed with joy at Jake's birth. Kyle hadn't been there, but I had thought he might have been caught up with work. Now I realized he had more sinister priorities. "Together," I croaked, struggling to process his words. "But we have a child, Kyle. Our child." Erin shifted uncomfortably, but didn't leave. Her presence alone shattered my world. There was no remorse in Kyle's eyes, no hesitation. "I've moved on, Mia," he said, crossing his arms. His stance was defensive yet unyielding. "I've been with Aaron for months now." I stood there, unable to react immediately. My mind was a whirlwind of anger, confusion, and heartache. I looked at Jake's tiny face, peaceful and unaware of the chaos unfolding around him. Dots of tears burned at the corner of my eyes, but I refused to let them spill. Not in front of Kyle. Not in front of her. When I finally spoke, my voice trembled. "You couldn't even wait until I got home? Until our son was here safely? You had to bring her here now?" Kyle sighed as if he were the victim in all this. His indifference was a knife twisting deeper into my heart. "This is my home too, Mia. Aaron has a right to be here." I took a deep breath, determined to keep my composure. "You couldn't tell me this before? Before you broke your vows? You just let me carry your child while you threw us away for her?" Erin finally spoke, her voice soft, almost apologetic. "Mia, I truly didn't mean for this to happen this way." "Didn't mean for this to happen?" I echoed, venom lacing my words. "You knew he's married. You knew we have a baby. How could you stand by him, knowing he was abandoning his family?" She flinched, but didn't reply. I turned my attention back to Kyle. All those years together, from high school sweethearts to hopeful newlyweds, now felt like lies. Every struggle we overcame, every memory we created, was it all for nothing? "I don't even recognize you," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "How could you become so heartless?" Kyle shrugged, his expression weary. "People change, Mia. You need to let it go." I stared at him, searching for any glimmer of the man I once loved. There was nothing but a stranger. I looked back down at Jake, my heart breaking anew for his innocent face. "I need you to leave," I said finally, stepping back towards the nursery door. "Both of you. Just go." Kyle opened his mouth to argue, but for once, Erin took a step forward and placed a hand on his arm. "Maybe it's better if we leave," she said quietly. He hesitated, then nodded. Without another word, they left, their footsteps echoing through the deserted hallway. I held Jake closer, feeling the weight of our shattered life pressed down on my shoulders. As the door closed behind them, I sunk onto the bed, tears streaming down my face. This was not the life I envisioned for my son, not the family I dreamt of. But one thing was clear. I would pick up the pieces for Jake. I would fight for a better future, for both of us. I sat in my parents' living room, cradling Jake, who was now peacefully asleep. The memories of Kyle's betrayal were fresh, but under the layer of pain, memories of our past together started resurfacing. It all began in high school. Kyle was the charming, confident senior everyone admired. I was a sophomore, shy and unassuming. One day after classes, he approached me with an easy grin. "Hey, Mia," he said casually, leaning against my locker. "Want to grab a soda with me?" I remember the flutter in my chest, the excitement of being noticed by someone like him. We talked for hours that day, laughing and sharing stories. It was the beginning of what felt like an epic love story. Over the years, we became inseparable. We went to prom together, graduated together, and dreamed of a future where nothing could pull us apart. The bond we shared seemed unbreakable, built on trust and unwavering affection. After high school, I went to college a few states away. Kyle stayed behind to work at his family's business. The distance was hard, but we made it work. Every holiday, every chance we got, we spent it together. It was during one of these visits when we drove up to the mountains for a weekend getaway that Kyle proposed. We stood on a cliff overlooking a beautiful valley, the sun setting behind us. Kyle got down on one knee, holding a small velvet box. "Mia, will you marry me?" he asked, his eyes bright with hope. My heart soared. "Yes, Kyle. Yes, 1,000 times yes." Our wedding was like something out of a fairy tale. Surrounded by family and friends, we exchanged vows in a quaint little church. Kyle looked at me with such love and promise in his eyes as we said our I do's. The future seemed limitless. In the early days of our marriage, we were blissfully happy. We moved into a cozy apartment, decorated it together, and started dreaming of building a family. We would take long walks, cook together, and talk late into the night about our plans and dreams. But somewhere along the way, things started to change. Kyle became busier at work. His nights grew later, his excuses flimsier. I began noticing his absence more, feeling the growing distance between us. Then came the day I found out I was pregnant. I was overjoyed, thinking it would bring us closer. Kyle's initial reaction seemed positive. "That's great news, Mia," he said, hugging me with what felt like genuine warmth. But it wasn't long before his late nights became more frequent. I convinced myself he was just stressed about becoming a parent. I tried to be understanding, supportive. I wanted to believe that our love was still strong, that we could overcome anything. Now, holding Jake and thinking about the past, I wondered how I could have been so blind. The signs were there, the subtle shifts in Kyle's behavior, his growing secrecy. I tried bringing us back to the simple, happy couple we once were, but I was fighting a losing battle. My parents' house, with its familiar smells and warmth, felt like a sanctuary. My mom, Linda, walked in, her face filled with concern. "How are you holding up, honey?" she asked gently. I looked at her, the tears threatening to spill. "I'm trying, Mom. For Jake." She wrapped an arm around me, her presence soothing. "We're here for you, Mia. Whatever you need, we're here." As I sat there, I understood that I couldn't dwell in the past. I needed to gather my strength for Jake and for myself. Because the happy memories were overshadowed by the reality of who Kyle had become. And now it was time to move forward and build a future where we could thrive without him. The weeks after Jake's birth blurred together in a haze of exhaustion and heartache. Kyle's betrayal was still fresh, but there were days I forced myself to believe he might come around, for Jake's sake. One evening, I sat on the living room floor with a stack of baby clothes, folding them one by one. Jake was in his bassinet nearby, his soft coos filling the room. Hearing a car pull up, my heart skipped a beat. Maybe Kyle realized his mistake. Kyle walked in with a stack of papers and a distracted look. He glanced at Jake but barely acknowledged me. "Can you sign these?" he asked, thrusting the papers toward me. I took them, confusion clouding my mind. "What are these?" "Separation papers," he said bluntly, avoiding eye contact. Anger welled up inside me. "Separation papers? You can't be serious." Kyle sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's the same thing, Mia. We're done." I stood up, locking eyes with him. "We have a child, Kyle. Don't you care about him at all?" "Of course I care," he snapped, though his voice lacked conviction. I didn't back down. "Then why are you doing this? Why throw everything away?" He avoided my gaze. "Erin and I, it's serious, Mia." I moved in with her. The weight of his words crushed me, but I held my ground. Jake deserves better than this, and so did I. Kyle finally met my eyes, but there was no softness, no regret. "It's over, Mia. Sign the papers." I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to scream. "Get out, Kyle. Just get out." He looked at Jake for a brief moment, then turned and left without another word. I let out a shaky breath, feeling both relief and despair. Days turned into weeks, and Kyle's visits became rare and colder. One afternoon, sitting on the porch with Jake, I heard footsteps approaching. I turned to see Kyle, his expression distant. "You're late again," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Kyle just shrugged. "Work's been busy." "Work?" I scoffed. "We both know it's not work keeping you." He looked annoyed, shifting his weight. "What do you want from me, Mia?" "To be a father to Jake, to show up when you say you will," I said, the frustration bubbling up. "Look, I'm trying, okay?" Kyle snapped. "Things are complicated." "And whose fault is that?" I shot back. "You made your choices. You can't just walk away from your responsibilities." He rubbed his face, looking exhausted. "I know, Mia. But Erin? She's pregnant." The world tilted. My breath caught in my throat. "Excuse me?" Kyle's face twisted with an unspoken plea. "She's pregnant, Mia. I need to be there for her." The shock turned to rage. "So you're just going to abandon Jake for her and another child? How can you be so heartless?" Kyle looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "I'm doing what I think is right." I took a deep breath, realizing he was beyond reasoning. "Get out, Kyle, and don't come back until you figure out what it means to be a decent human being." He left without another word. As he walked away, I felt a grim determination rise within me. Jake and I would be fine. We didn't need him. We deserved better. And if Kyle wanted to become a ghost in our lives, then he'd face the consequences of his choices. Every action has a reaction, and Kyle would soon learn that actions have consequences, even if he was too blind to see them now. And I would make sure of it. Settling back at my parents' home was both a comfort and a reminder of how everything had unraveled. Their house was warm and full of love, a stark contrast to the cold indifference Kyle showed us. Mom and Dad were fantastic with Jake, and it was their support that kept me going each day. "Mom, do you think I did something wrong?" I asked one evening while she was helping me with dinner. It was a question that had nagged me for weeks. Mom turned, her eyes soft and concerned. "No, honey, this isn't your fault. Kyle made his choices. People change, but that doesn't mean you did anything wrong." "I just don't understand how he could turn his back on us so easily," I said, stirring the pot absent-mindedly. "Some people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone," she replied, placing her hand on my shoulder. "You're stronger than you think, Mia. You have a beautiful son and a family that loves you." A few days later, I decided to take Jake for a walk in the park. It was a way to clear my mind, to focus on the simple joy in his innocent giggles and wide-eyed curiosity. As I navigated the stroller along the path, a familiar voice called out to me, "Mia, is that you?" I turned to see an old friend from high school, Laura, approaching with her own toddler in tow. We hadn't spoken in years. Her presence was a pleasant surprise. "Laura, it's been ages," I said, smiling. "I heard what happened," she said, her face sympathetic. "I'm so sorry, Mia." "Thanks," I replied. "Coming back here has been hard, but I need to focus on what's best for Jake." Laura nodded. "You're doing the right thing, Mia. It's just awful what Kyle did. I can't even fathom it." The sincerity in her voice was comforting. We talked for a while, reminiscing about old times and catching up on our lives. As we chatted, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was good to be reminded that I had people who cared. When the conversation turned to our futures, I felt a spark of determination. "I have to move forward, for Jake and for me," I said, the resolve clear in my voice. Laura smiled encouragingly. "You will, Mia, and you'll come out stronger on the other side." Returning home later that afternoon, I found solace in daily routine and the support system around me. But in quiet moments, the hurt would resurface, reminding me of the harsh reality of my situation. My parents, seeing my struggle, tried to comfort me as much as they could. "Mia, why don't you take some time for yourself tonight? We'll look after Jake," Dad suggested one evening. I hesitated, but then nodded. "Thanks, Dad. I think I need it." I stepped out for a walk alone. The night air was cool and refreshing. I needed this time to clear my head, to think about the future. If Kyle thought he could just move on without repercussions, he was wrong. His cruelty had consequences. I would fight for Jake, and I would make sure Kyle understood what he had lost. Not out of spite, but because we deserved better. Returning home, I felt a newfound strength. Kyle's abandonment didn't define us. His actions wouldn't break us. We would find happiness again, and I was ready to face whatever came next. My determination solidified into a quiet, unwavering resolve. For Jake and for myself, we would rise above this, stronger than ever. The day of Jake's birth was supposed to be a joyous occasion. Instead, it turned into a day of reckoning. I was in labor, and Kyle was nowhere to be found. My mom held my hand, her calm eyes giving me strength. "He's going to regret this, Mia. You just focus on bringing Jake into this world," she whispered. Hours passed, and Kyle still hadn't shown up. Exhausted but determined, I pushed through the pain. Surrounded by the warmth of my hands, I finally heard Jake's first cries. He was perfect. As I held him, a door creaked open. I looked up to see Kyle, and to my horror, Aaron was with him. They stood in the doorway, looking awkward and out of place. "You're too late, Kyle," I said coldly, clutching Jake protectively. Kyle stepped forward, his expression flat. I came as soon as I could." Aaron shifted uncomfortably but didn't speak. My mom stood up, her anger barely contained. "How dare you bring her here?" she demanded, her voice shaking with fury. "You missed your son's birth, Kyle." Kyle glanced at Aaron, then back at us. "I didn't know the labor would be so quick," he said, his excuse falling flat. "That's your excuse?" I said, my voice rising. "You abandoned us, Kyle. This isn't something you can just walk away from." He frowned, looking at Jake. "I didn't abandon you. Things are complicated." "Complicated?" I couldn't hold back anymore. "You chose her over your family. That's not complicated. That's betrayal." Aaron looked like she wanted to disappear. "Mia, we didn't mean for it to happen like this." I laughed bitterly. "Really? You didn't think about how it would affect Jake and me? What did you think would happen?" Kyle took a step closer, but Mom moved between us. "You need to leave, Kyle. Right now." Kyle looked like he wanted to argue, but then his shoulders slumped. He turned and walked out, Aaron following closely behind. The door closed with a finality that echoed in the room. Returning my attention to Jake, I felt my resolve harden. I wasn't going to let Kyle's betrayal defeat us. My parents' support bolstered my strength. I knew that we could build a new life, one filled with love and support, even without Kyle. Over the next few weeks, I focused on Jake and tried to find some normalcy. But every time Kyle came by, rarely and always with flimsy excuses, the wound reopened. One evening, after another missed visit, I decided enough was enough. Dialing Kyle's number, I waited as it rang. When he picked up, I didn't give him a chance to speak. "Kyle, this isn't working. You're barely here, and when you aren't present." He sighed on the other end. "Mia, what do you want from me?" "I want you to either step up or stay away," I said firmly. "Jake deserves better. I deserve better." There was a long pause. "Fine, I'll stay away. I think it's better for everyone." I hung up, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. But mostly, I felt a newfound strength. Jake and I would be okay. We didn't need Kyle to define our happiness. As I rocked Jake to sleep that night, I whispered, "We're going to be all right, little one. We're going to build a beautiful life, just you and me." I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. We had a long journey ahead, but I was ready for it. For Jake, I would face every challenge head on, and with my family's support, there was nothing we couldn't overcome. Jake was napping in his crib when I heard a knock on the door. Surprised, I wiped my hands and headed to answer it. Standing on the porch was Susan, Kyle's mother, looking more tired and worn than I'd ever seen her. "Mia, can I come in?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I nodded, stepping back to let her in. She glanced around the house, her eyes lingering on photos of Jake and me. We settled into the living room, and I prepared for whatever was coming next. "I'm sorry for showing up unannounced," Susan started, her eyes welling up. "I just found out about Aaron and everything." I took a deep breath. "Susan, I don't know what to say. Your son, She reached over, grasping my hands. "I know, Mia. I know what Kyle's done, and I'm so ashamed. He's broken my heart, too." The raw pain in her voice mirrored my own. "He missed Jake's birth, Susan. He brought her to the hospital. He's been completely absent." My voice cracked, but I willed myself not to cry. Susan nodded, her face hardening. "I'm not here to make excuses for him. I've seen his behavior for years, the irresponsibility, the selfishness. I always hoped he'd grow out of it." Her hand tightened around mine. "But this is unforgivable." She let go of my hands and leaned back, her composure barely holding. "I came because I don't want you to think we're all like him. Jake is still my grandson, and you are still family to me." I nodded, feeling my own tears threaten to spill. "Thank you, Susan. It means more than you know." Susan looked determined. "Kyle will have to face the consequences of his actions. I won't support him in this. I'll make sure he knows what he's thrown away, and he'll feel every moment of regret." Just then, another knock interrupted us. Erin stood at the door, looking hesitant and remorseful. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. Susan's eyes flashed with anger, but I nodded, allowing Erin inside. She stood awkwardly by the doorway, clearly aware of the tension in the room. "I didn't know you were here, Mrs. Harrison," Erin said, her voice meek. Susan didn't waste a second. "What do you want, Erin? Haven't you caused enough damage?" Tears welled up in Erin's eyes. "I didn't come to cause more pain. I came to apologize." "You think an apology fixes this?" Susan snapped, her voice filled with contempt. "You destroyed my family." Erin looked at me, desperation in her eyes. "Mia, I know I've done horrible things. I know Kyle's not who I thought he was. I just found out he's been lying to me, too." I raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "A lot of things," Erin replied, wiping her tears. "He told me he would leave you months ago, that you two were practically over. I believed him. And now—" Her voice broke. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity. "And now?" I prompted, though my voice was still cold. Erin looked down. "He's still seeing someone else. I found out yesterday. I can't believe I ever trusted him." Susan shook her head, exasperated. "My son has always been selfish. This just proves it." Erin took a deep breath, gathering her resolve. "I'm willing to help you, Mia. Kyle needs to face what he's done, and I'll stand by you if you want to take this further. Legally, emotionally, whatever you need." I looked at Erin, seeing for the first time a woman who had been lied to, manipulated, much like me. I nodded slowly. "All right, Erin, let's hold him accountable together." Susan's eyes softened as she looked between us. "Good. He needs to learn, and he will." In that moment, I realized our strength lay in unity. We would confront Kyle together, and he would regret every choice he made. For Jake, and for all of us, revenge would be our quietly spoken promise. Moving back into my parents' home felt like a fresh chapter. Linda and George welcomed me with open arms, and Susan remained a constant support. Each day I felt stronger, more determined to carve out a new life for Jake and me. One afternoon, while Jake was napping, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Erin standing there, looking more resolved than I'd ever seen her. "I found something you need to see," she said, holding up a stack of papers. I let her in and we sat at the kitchen table. "What is it?" I asked, intrigued. "Proof," Erin said simply. "Proof of Kyle's deceit. Finances, text messages, emails. He's been siphoning money, lying to everyone and cheating on me too." Her voice trembled, but anger and resolve shone through. I took a minute to go through the documents she presented, feeling a mix of vindication and anger. "This is unbelievable. I knew he wasn't honest, but I didn't know it was this bad." Erin nodded. "I thought I could trust him. I was wrong. And now, I want to help you get what you deserve." Susan walked in just then, and seeing the papers on the table asked, "What's all this?" Erin explained as succinctly as she could. Susan's eyes widened with each revelation. "He's more despicable than I thought," she muttered. I looked up at Erin. "Thank you for this. It's more than I could have hoped for. Now we can hold him accountable." Erin let out a sigh of relief. "Thank you for giving me this chance. I want to set things right." It wasn't long before we set up a meeting with a lawyer. With Susan's encouragement and Erin's support, I felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. George drove us to the lawyer's office, his reassuring presence calming my nerves. Attorney Parker greeted us warmly. "Let's get started," he said as we took our seats. "These documents could be pivotal. We need to compile a strong case for custody and support." We spent hours cataloging the evidence and formulating a strategy. Parker assured us, "Kyle's actions are reprehensible. The court will see that." Weeks passed as our case took shape. Kyle remained oblivious, continuing his life as though nothing had changed. But our silence would not last long. With each passing day, our resolve grew stronger. One evening, Susan, Erin, and I sat in my living room discussing the latest updates. "The court date is set for next month," I said. "I'm ready." Susan nodded. "You're doing the right thing, Mia, for Jake and for yourself." Erin chimed in, her voice steady. "I'll testify to everything, Mia. He can't escape the truth." The day of the hearing arrived. Erin and I entered the courtroom with a mix of trepidation and determination. Parker greeted us, his encouraging smile a boost to our confidence. Kyle walked in, looking clueless. When he saw us united, his expression darkened. He tried to approach, but Parker intercepted him. "Mr. Harrison, please take your seat." The hearings were intense, filled with revelations that painted Kyle in his true colors. Texts and emails exposed his infidelities and financial deceit. Erin's testimony was damning, her voice unwavering as she recounted the lies and manipulation. When it was my turn to speak, I felt all eyes on me. "Kyle abandoned our family when we needed him most," I said, my voice steady. "He missed the birth of our son, brought his mistress to the hospital, and continued to lie and deceive us. Jake deserves better. We deserve better." The judge took it all in, her expression stern. "Mr. Harrison, your actions have been reprehensible. Given the evidence, I grant full custody to Mrs. Harrison, along with the necessary support and protection measures." Kyle looked defeated, his arrogance shattered. As we walked out of the courtroom, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Erin and Susan flanked me, their presence a testament to the strength and unity. Outside, I hugged Erin. "Thank you," I said, my eyes meeting hers. She smiled, tears in her own eyes. "We did it, Mia." Susan placed a hand on my shoulder. "Now you can move forward, Mia. Build a life where you and Jake can thrive." As we drove home, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The fight was hard, but it was worth it. We had faced Kyle's vile nature head-on, and we had won. Now, it was time to focus on the future. Stronger, wiser, and unbroken. The weeks following the court ruling were transformative. Life slowly began to fall into a new rhythm. Jake's laughter filled the house, and with every milestone he achieved, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. One sunny afternoon, I was in the yard, watching Jake attempt his first wobbly steps on the grass. Susan arrived, her face lit with joy as she watched her grandson. "Look at him go," she exclaimed, clapping her hands. I turned to see a shadow approach from the driveway. Erin stepped out of her car, a tentative smile on her face. "Can I join you guys?" she asked softly. "Of course," I replied, waving her over. Erin sat next to me on the porch steps, her eyes fixed on Jake. "He's growing so fast," she murmured. "Time moves quickly," Susan noted, her gaze soft. We watched Jake for a while, his giggles blending with the sound of rustling leaves. There was a peace in the air, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had once dominated our lives. Erin broke the silence, her voice somber. I saw Kyle yesterday. He's not doing well. Susan stiffened but remained silent. I looked at Erin, curiosity piqued. What happened? He's living alone, lost his job, and looks like he's given up on everything. It's sad in a way, Erin explained, shaking her head. I felt a flicker of pity but quickly pushed it away. He made his choices, I said firmly. Now he's facing the consequences. Erin nodded, her eyes filled with regret. Still, it's hard to see someone fall so far. Susan finally spoke, her voice steady. Kyle had every opportunity to turn his life around, to make things right. Instead, he chose a path of deceit and self-destruction. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom to understand the gravity of their actions. Jake stumbled and fell, but quickly picked himself up, his resilient spirit shining through. I smiled, feeling a sense of pride and hope. Erin watched him, a newfound respect in her eyes. You're doing an amazing job with him, Mia. He's lucky to have you, Erin said, her voice sincere. Thank you, I replied, feeling a warmth spread through me. It hasn't been easy, but I'm determined to give him the best life possible. As the days turned into weeks, I noticed a change in myself. The anger and hurt began to fade, replaced by a sense of resolution and peace. Jake thrived under the love and stability provided by my parents, Susan, and even Erin, who had become a more frequent presence. One evening after Jake had been put to bed, Susan stayed behind, her eyes shining with a new light. Mia, I've been thinking, she began. You have such a gift for nurturing and creating a loving environment. Have you ever considered starting a parenting support group? The idea took me by surprise, but it resonated deeply. I haven't, but it sounds like something that could help others. And help me too. Susan smiled broadly. I'd be happy to support you in any way. You have a story that can inspire and empower many. With Susan's encouragement and Erin's backing, I began planning the support group. It wasn't just about sharing my journey, but about building a community where parents could find strength and solidarity in one another. Months later, our first meeting was a success. As I looked around the room, filled with parents sharing their stories, offering support to one another, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. We were all stronger together, united by our shared experiences and determination to build better futures for our children. Kyle's absence was a reminder of the past, but it no longer defined our present. My focus was on Jake, on the people who stood by us, and on the future we were building, one filled with love, support, and unbreakable bonds. And in that, we found our retribution, our poetic justice, and our peace.